So as I think about my life, I like to look back and pick out things that have happened in my life that are useful and helpful in my life. And one of the things that has been very useful in my life is the things that I received as a gift. When I think about my birthdays, when I think about holidays, like New Year, Chinese New Year, it could be Christmas, and it could have been just a birthday party or a surprise party or something like that. It could have been just something from my colleagues at work. I can just think about that gift. And sometimes it was just very personal. I remember from a very early age receiving gifts from people, but also giving gifts myself. And it's these very personal gifts at times, these efforts that we have made for others, or others have made on our behalf for us, have been a great source of joy and happiness in my life. So I'm just asking all of you to just remember a time where you received a gift into your hand, a birthday gift, something appropriate, something from somebody who loved you, who cared for you, and it was something perhaps you needed, or maybe you didn't even realize that you needed it, and it was thoughtful and caring and considerate of that person. So as the recipient of the gift, when we receive something, we normally say, "Thank you very much. Thank you, that's so kind. Oh, thank you, that's really what I was hoping for," or I never thought I would ever get this, or "It's so kind and generous of you." So maybe you can just allow your mind to remember a time where you received a gift. Just really dwell on it and remember it as best as you can. Maybe some remember it visually, maybe some of you remember it in your body, in the touch and the feeling of the body. But do your best to remember as you can. And don't worry about the particulars or the circumstances or any information. Maybe some of you remember it by smell, by taste, by touch. Just remember this gift as best as you can. Remember receiving it, and remember the words that you might have said in the language that you would have spoken them in, from the heart. Thank you. Thank you so much. How very kind. I'm really excited to get this from you. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. Thank you for this wonderful gift. Thank you for this kind thought. Thank you for your kind word. Thank you for your kind introduction. Thank you so much for this gift. Thank you for the gift of your time, of your patience, of your help. Thank you for helping me with my project. Thank you for helping me with my homework. Thank you for helping me with that recipe. Thank you for helping me with that dana. Thank you for all of your input. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your specialist knowledge. Thank you for just caring. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the thought. Thank you for the nice note. Thank you so much. And similarly, I can just also think of the times that I have given gifts to people, to places, to organizations. And I can remember it being well received. I don't want to remember any other gifts, just the ones that were well received, the ones that I felt were appropriate, that were well received, that were purposeful, that were useful, that were meaningful to me, or even sometimes it's just frivolous, just an act of care, an act of love, an act of kindness. So I can easily remember these kind of gifts, calling them up to my mind. Sometimes it's just as a monk, I can remember walking along on Pindapat, receiving rice or food from people, anonymous to me, but a great act of love and kindness and care. Thank you so much. Well done. I really appreciate your thought, your gift, your kindness, your care, your consideration. And just seeing also my own generosity, my own kindness, sharing my own wealth, my own abundance, be it my time, my effort, my knowledge, my material wealth, and feeling that it is well received, appreciated, an act of kindness. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the recipients for receiving it. You're welcome. I'm so glad that you enjoyed this gift. I'm so glad that you feel it's appropriate and helpful and skillful. Thank you so much. And similarly, I can now also just scan down through my different parts of my body and really thank the top of my own head. I don't need to see it or anything, just I'm mostly focused on the location. But if you see it or visualize it or sense it in some way, that's also nice. The more heart I can put into my embodiment of this thought, the better it is for me. Thank you so much to the top of my head for the gift you bring into my life. And thank you to the back of my head. Thank you for protecting me and caring for me. Thank you to the right side of my head, my right ear, for the sounds. And thanks again to the left side of my head for the sounds, for the music, for the birds, all sorts of things I can hear through the left side of my head. Thank you so much for this gift in my life. And thank you to my forehead. Sometimes you frown, sometimes you seem to smile. Thank you so much to my forehead. And thank you to my eyes for the gift of vision and sight. And thank you to my nose for the bouquets of flowers, the smell of newness, for the gift that you bring into my life, the smell of memory. And thank you so much to my mouth for the many meals, the kind words, the smiles and the laughs. Thank you so much to my mouth. And thank you to my neck for my voice box and for being a nice articulation, so I've been able to look left and look right and enjoy those sunsets. Enjoy the sun and the moon tracking across the sky with my neck. And thank you to my shoulders. And just as I feel grateful to my shoulders, I just put down any shopping baskets or any weight out of my hands, just letting go, giving full permission to my shoulders to really relax a little bit deeper as my depth of gratitude towards my own shoulders, letting go any regrets about the past, any anxiety about the future, any tension I may be holding in this area. I'm making amends to my own shoulders by letting go. And thank you so much to my arms, my hands, my fingers. Thank you so much. And I can just imagine my hands, which I've always been involved in most of my givings, physical givings anyway. My hands are giving and receiving. Thank you so much to my hands for the great gift of this skillfulness that you've brought into my life. And thank you to my lungs. Thank you for each breath of air that you bring in, breathing out. This great gift of life that you bring into my life. Thank you so much to my lungs. And thank you to my heart for circulating the blood and all the emotions that I have felt in my heart, whether they were protective emotions like anger or fear or shame, or the joys, the recovering emotions of love, compassion, courage. All of these transactions, all of these happenings are in my heart. And I'm so grateful for the way that my heart connects me with the world and with my friends and with all of the people that matter to me. My heart is so important to me. And thank you to my stomach and intestines for the gift of food and support and strength. And thank you to my spine, upper spine, middle spine, lower spine, radiating ribs. Thank you for the gift of support, for keeping me upright, for supporting my life, for keeping me straight and keeping me on a good path. Thank you to my back and spine. Thank you to my hips and pelvis. Thank you for the strength and rigidity, the stability you bring into my body, into my life. And thank you so much to my thighs for the power and strength you give to lift and walk and move and carry me around. And thank you to my knees for the bending and flexing, the humility, the gift of forgiveness, that I can always bend and knee, bow. I can always find a way to forgive myself, and that is a great gift. And thank you to my shin and calf for the spring in the step when I felt joyous and happy. And thank you to my heels, ankle, foot and toes for their intelligence, the way you carry me across the land. Thank you so much to my feet. So putting all of this body together, the feet, the legs, the torso, the arms, the neck and the head, let me extend my great gratitude to this body and mind of me, and let me greet and express my gratitude, my sincere heartfelt gratitude to my own body and mind. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the support, for all the gifts you bring into my life, this body and mind of mine. And just as I feel a depth of gratitude for myself, for this body and mind, and just as an overflowing little spring in a silent forest pool might just bubble and overflow, so too do I extend this kind generosity towards all in this room, towards everybody else in this room, just overflowing and flowing outwards, this sense of gratitude to all who are in this room today. Thank you so much for sharing your time, for making the time to be here. Thank you so much. And we just radiate this out further and wider across the whole city of Melbourne. Thank you to all of our friends and neighbours, all the people around us in the surrounds of Melbourne. Thank you for the gift of peace and prosperity that we share today. Thank you so much to all of our fellow Melbourneites today. And let's just spread it across this whole lucky land of Australia, this red land. Thank you to all of our fellow Australians today. Thank you for the gifts that each and every one of you bring into my life. Thank you so much. And we extend our sense of gratitude to all of our surrounding neighbours, Tasmania, New Zealand, Indonesia, just all around us, outwards and unbounded. We're spreading this great sense of gratitude in all directions. And we thank our neighbours for all the great gifts they bring into our life. Gifts of peace, prosperity, generally helpful. And we just spread it up further. We can just move up through Southeast Asia, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Burma, Laos, Cambodia, this whole region, Thank you to the whole of Southeast Asia. And just as the sun is so generous with its warmth, if we track west, we can come to South Asia, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan. This whole region, thank you so much to the gifts that have come, that have been of great benefit in my life. Gifts like these teachings, what we're teaching today, Caga and Dana, reflection on gratitude or on generosity. And we move through the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Yemen. This whole region, thank you so much for all the gifts you brought into this world, into this civilization. And as we move through the Arab peninsulas, through to Africa, Egypt to Morocco to South Africa, the whole of the African continent. Thank you so much to all of Africa for its great gifts, its great leaders like Nelson Mandela, the great pyramids, the great athletes, the great animals, great safari parks, the great nature, the great history. And then we're just moving north up through Europe, from Italy to Scandinavia, from Portugal to Turkey, from Ireland to Russia. This whole region of Europe, thank you so much for so many gifts, be it technology or history or art or culture. Thank you for all of the enrichment you've brought into my life. And we can cross over the Atlantic to the Americas, South America, Central America, North America, the whole continent of the Americas. Thank you so much for your gifts. Sport, food, medicine, entertainment. So many things. And finally we cross the Pacific to China, to the whole Far East, Vietnam, Korea, Mongolia, Tibet, this whole region. Thank you so much for so many gifts, so many benefits you've brought into the world. And now we can just step back from this whole planet Earth. We can maybe just view it as a globe, different oceans, the different continents and islands, the clouds, the polar caps, the different land masses of different colors, rivers and lakes, this whole planet Earth. So I just extend my great sense of gratitude towards this planet Earth. Thank you so much to this planet Earth for every gift you have offered, every breath I take. In this life, I have to be grateful to this whole planet Earth for supporting my life, my welfare, my well-being, my happiness. Thank you so much to this whole planet Earth. And now just maybe letting that planet go, this beautiful home of ours. Maybe I can just walk over to where the sun is, in the middle of the solar system, and just treat it as a couch maybe a little bit. Enjoy its comfort. And just as the sun is generous in giving its sunlight in all directions to all beings, so too do I share with all beings in all directions a deep sense of thankfulness, of gratitude. Thank you to all beings in all directions. Thank you for all the gifts that you have offered me, and be it even just your starlight. Thank you to all beings in all directions, north, south, east, west, above and below. Thank you so much. Thank you for receiving my gifts, from me. Thank you for the gifts you offer into my life. Thank you for this exchange. Thank you for the connection. And sometimes I like to just bring my attention to my own breath, breathing in and out. And as I breathe in, thank, and as I breathe out, you. Just using the simple mantra to focus my gratitude, breathing in and out. Just breathing into this sense of gratitude for all beings in all directions. Gratitude for myself, gratitude for others, gratitude for us, or gratitude itself. Just this whole aspect of my own mind, just illuminating and growing this quality of gratitude or of thankfulness, appreciation of gifts received and given. This kind exchange with the whole world, with thank you. Just sinking deeper and deeper into this place in the sun, shining this light of gratitude in all directions, breathing into it wholeheartedly, thankful for the giving, thankful for the receiving. With this breath, thank you. So as I start to come to the end of this practice, how do I feel in my heart? Do I feel at ease or dis-ease? Do I feel calm and peaceful or disturbed and anxious? Do I feel light or heavy? Do I feel I'm moving towards a light or going from brighter to brighter? Or do I feel like I'm moving from light to dark or from dark to darker? How do I feel in my heart? Is this a heavy or a light sensation? Is this coarse or smooth? What is the tone? What is the ambience? Do I feel safe here? Am I experiencing joy? Do I experience peace? Is this mind not scattered, free from scattering? Is this mind balanced, equipoise, just looking on? How do I feel? So this is my effort to practice something I call Caga Nusati. Caga is gratitude. It's translated as gratitude in Pali, or reflection on generosity. So this is one of the aspects of one of the many teachings that the Buddha encouraged us to reflect on. So every day, it's part of the duties of a monk is to reflect on the purpose of our dwellings, of our robes, and of food. So after people have given the food, and we rejoice in this, we call it anumodana, we rejoice in the offerings of people. And what we're really rejoicing at is the skillfulness in the offering. And when that's finished, usually, if you ever see me, I'm usually looking into my bowl of food, and we're reflecting on the purpose of the food. So usually I'm chanting in something in my mind, which is this reflection on the requisites and the purpose of food, that is to support my health and welfare and well-being for another day. So in this transaction, this is something that took me a long time to get my head around, because I grew up in a Christian family. So any act of, from a very young childhood, we would have the poor box in one part of the house, particularly in Lent, one time of the year. And we would put the money aside, and we'd always be frankly tortured by our parents that there was starving children in some part of the world, and we would be told that we were so lucky to have what we had, and that we had to put aside our pocket money as an act of penance. And so giving and receiving was a bit weird compared to when I run into it in Buddhism, where people are encouraged to feel happy about what they're giving and find things that they're joyful to give towards. And but nevertheless, I had some very loving people in my life, and I, from a very early age, just even now in this reflection, remembering on what I had to be grateful for. Actually, the thing that came to my memory was just of a time there was an old man who would look after me. And he had probably finished school when he was 12 or 14, so he wasn't very educated, but he loved reading. He loved reading. And he really gave me the gift of pleasure in reading. So even though I'm actually dyslexic, so I have a disability towards reading, and so do the rest of my family, so they're not really readers, my family. He would read stories to me and poetry. But especially he shared his love of poetry. He liked these romantic poets, and Robert Burns and all this kind of thing, so he would recite this to me. And I remember he would get me to read out these poems when I was young, read aloud, and he would record them. And before he passed away in his 70s, I found him one day replaying these tape recordings of when I was about 3 or 4. So it was like a gift in his life. And he had, I had handwritten out one of these poems that he used to have me read, and I had decorated it with pictures, and given it to him, and he had kept this. So when he died, this was one of the things that we found, that he had kept as a treasure all his life. So there's something very, very powerful in Caga. There's something that the Buddha is highlighting here. And there's something very powerful in Dana. And you will find in all of the teachings of all the Buddhas, whichever Buddha arises, they will always teach these three teachings of Dana, Sila, Bhavana. And I've had the privilege of living a long time close to monastics before I was a monk. And as a trainee, as an anagarika in a monastery, and as a novice, and as a bhikkhu, I've always had this privilege of being close. And one of the ways of being closer to senior monks is to be of service to them and support them in their physical, in whatever little way that we can. So for 5 years I trained in Bodhinyana, and I really made a strong practice of this. And there was quite a culture at the time. It was difficult for a lot of the Western monks to appreciate the opportunity it was to support a senior monk. So sometimes Ajahn used to say that he was supporting his junior monks, that his junior monks weren't supporting him. And I remember one Wesak, May, we have a big celebration, and he had 3 junior monks, two monks before me, the 2 previous weekends, and I came in and he said, I'm glad to see you, that I've had enough what he's called upatak, the junior monk beside the senior monk is called the upatak, the attendant. He said, I've had enough upataking the upatak for a while. He needed somebody who was going to make sure that things were done. So our duties are often to put out the sitting cloth and make the arrangements and make sure that the PA system is working and all of this kind of thing. So Sriju is doing this for me today, which is really nice. And it's an act of kindness and an act of generosity, and it's a bit like the stones in a river. It's by their long time in a river that it smooths all the corners off. They become nice and rounded over time, and they become very considerate. So within our rules as monks, we have, you could say, major rules and minor rules. And so the major rules we need to confess as such. It's called confession, but in reality it's called announcing your unskillfulness, apatidesana. You announce your unskillfulness. And then there's rules we don't need to announce, so they're considered minor rules, but most of these are to do with etiquette, the ways of doing things. Just like here we drive on the left side of the road, well, the American etiquette is to drive on the right side of the road. They're just common agreements. And certain of those agreements are about just helping us to live in sort of company of other monks. There's always this goal that we mix like milk and honey, but as you know, it's living and sharing space with anybody, be it at work or in our social arrangements or in our family arrangements, is a taxing business. It's all good to be, in theory, in a little glass house and nobody's disturbing you. To be the boy in the bubble, as it were. But in reality, the true test of the practice is in daily life and in our interactions. And again, I find in this teaching of Caga and in Dana, very powerful engagement with the world. It's a very profound engagement with the world. And I always sort of had a practice of generosity, So there's a number of different meanings to the word Christian, actually. One is that it's a religion, and another one is that you're a bit narrow-minded, a little Christian in your views. But the third meaning is to be Christian is to be generous. So I grew up in a situation and a time and a place where being generous was part and practice. I was expected to be generous by my family, but I can't say I was skillful at it in other ways. Like I said, sometimes there was a sense of being shamed into giving things, and that I was expected to give, and irrespective of whether others give. So I learned over time that healthy giving is giving and receiving. It is a back and a forth, and it's friendly, it's kind. It's not always one way, So we need to find ways of giving and receiving in our life, and it's very interesting that even in different programs that I've come across, amends plays a very strong role. So in Buddhism, when we meet another senior monk, normally we ask for forgiveness as a starting point. And so we're trying to give each other forgiveness, even though, we haven't met each other before. And this ceremony, I don't like to treat it as a ritual. I like to actually think of it as starting a clean slate with somebody. And when we part company, we usually do this, again, the ceremony of ending with a clean slate as such, where we give each other the sort of benefit of the doubt. We give each other a sense of forgiveness. And this is a kind of a gift as well towards each other. So I started to see this act of gifting or of dana in all aspects of my life. In fact, even sila, we've just been reciting the 5 precepts and so on, is a kind of a gift to the world. On the negative side of it is don't do this and don't do that. But on the positive side of that is do this and do that. So we do acts of ahimsa, of non-harm to the world. We're giving our kindness to the world, our non-cruelty to the world, our freedom from cruelty. Where we're giving the opposite of thieving is that we're generous. The opposite of violating people's physical boundaries is that we protect people's physical boundaries. The opposite of harsh speech and lying and all this kind of stuff is that we gift the kind language and speech to the world. And when we avoid things like, deluding our mind with intoxicants and so on, we're giving clarity to the world. We're giving clarity of mind to the world. Sometimes when I visited some family recently in Ireland, they have this habit of drinking wine before they go to bed, which we never had historically, but now it's become part of your shopping list. You walk in, you get a bottle of wine, you come home, crack it open, and you're just chilling out before you go to bed. And but I was always surprised that even at the time of reaching for the glass of the wine, people were turning off. And I really learned that, look, I'm making a lot of time and effort to spend this time with you, and you're making the effort to just switch off. And that lack of clarity in their mind, tuning out, so somebody's presence is a very important thing. When we're not present to our children, we're really depriving them, giving them the scarcity of our attention. And it's a real torture in a way. Where kids are feeling alone and isolated because their parents haven't got the bandwidth for them, they haven't got the attention, they're numbing, they're practicing in these ways. So even our attention is a gift. Children crave attention, they need healthy attention. And if we don't give them that attention, then they'll be disfigured by that in some way. And it can be just simply our sharing our passions and our interests, just as that old man in my life shared his passion and interest in reading. He loved poetry and he loved Agatha Christie and he loved Jeeves and Wooster, and that's what I grew up on. And he liked westerns and he liked action movies, and that's what I grew up on, and I still love them to this day because they're my connection with him. And because I have a strong confidence in rebirth, my relationship with him has not ended. It still goes on. And I share the merits very frequently with him in where he is right now and in what he's doing. And when I look into my own behavior, I can see his habits. I still enjoy poetry. If I want to sometimes find a skillful way. Sometimes when I was trying to come up with these guided meditations, if you listen carefully to the language, actually some of it is poetic, because it's coming from the great romantic writers of the past, which was part of my conditioning, but also those guys were thinking a lot about these emotions. And I have to say, as a male growing up, I wasn't getting a lot of emotional training and education. My emotional intelligence, whatever it was, but I was fairly Neanderthal in other ways around my emotions. I find it reassuring that I find the teenagers these days are much more attuned to their emotions. They can name their emotions more easily than some of the older people that I deal with. So I think there's still a lot for me to learn, and Last night I had the opportunity to be with the teen group, but to me it's a gift, really is a gift, and I was conscious of this last night. They were giving me their time. It wasn't just simply that I was giving them my time. I value what I do. I value what I do. And a couple of them, I had to put them in line, that they were entitled to their opinion, but they didn't own the facts. They were teenagers, they were pushing a few boundaries, but it was cool, you know? There was a respect, and it was because I had a sense of gratitude in them. I wasn't there to teach them, they were there to teach me. And it leads to an interesting dynamic of where I'm highly interested in what they're doing and in their hobbies, in whatever gift that they're bringing into the world. And it was interesting that I think every single one of them had a different hobby. And that's pretty amazing. I grew up in a small little farm place where we all had the same hobbies, pretty much. There wasn't a lot of options, but these kids have different hobbies. And it's, you know, pretty left field, some of the stuff that people are into. And I just made me stop and think, oh, that's interesting. What do you get out of that? You know, what's interesting in that for you, and how it was shaping their lives. You know, when I spend time with younger kids, they're teaching me a lot about the future, because what they're doing right now is the future. It may be my future. It may be what I'm doing in 5 or 10 years' time. You know, they're hacking away at life, hacking away at the edges of things. And that's sometimes when that knocks all those edges off of things, it becomes the thing that the rest of us do down the road. You know, I like to use things like WhatsApp or something like that. It helps me keep in touch with my family. But I bet it was some kid, 16-year-old or 13-year-old, who was hacking out these kind of texting or whatever. Back in the old days, we just had simple texting stuff, and they were hacking away at it. The same with video editing and all their Instagram and Snapchat work. I'm sure in a few years' time we'll all be having highly proficient gadgets that do that for us pretty seamlessly, because we're not so quick, we're not willing to make a hobby out of trying to improve these things. So these are all, I start to view the importance and the role of gifting in my life. You know, I don't have money to give to people, but I have time. I have time, and I have quality of attention. And I really see that when I'm with the kids. I can put a laser light of attention on what they're doing and in their sense. Not in a scrutinizing way, but in a way that's like they have my attention and they know it. They know that I'm listening, you know. I had 30 kids here last night, and I could remember what every one of them said. I asked them, what were you saying? And they said, no, that wasn't what you said. And the rest of the kids said, yeah, that's true, it wasn't what you were saying, you know? Sometimes they kind of try to wiggle their way out of things, you know? They're kind of tricky. But if you're pretty mindful of what's going on and you're paying attention, you can kind of go, no, that's not what you said. I know what you said, I know what you did. Teenagers are pushing boundaries, and that's their job. They push boundaries of technology and time. They are the future. And they're just trying to be individuals, trying to be themselves. And each phase of their life is a kind of a gift. Just as like we love picking up these young babies. I like my meditation, as you know, on metta or on compassion involves a little baby. And sometimes like they've had programs of bringing babies into prisons, believe it or not, so that like these hardened criminals can embrace a baby, can hug a baby, because they just find it so hard to forgive themselves. They find it so hard to connect with that humanity within themselves. I mean, if you're in a high security prison, I mean, basically it's the survival of the fittest. It's a pretty nasty system that they've got going in a lot of prisons. They might talk about correction and change, but a lot of it is very penitential and quite cruel. At least my experience has been that way anyway. And just having that gift of holding a baby in your hands, of a mother entrusting a hardened murderer, criminal to hold their little 6-month baby, that vulnerable baby, is something very transformative in it for people. And I find that that's important, you know, so that even Even a young baby can be a gift to somebody that's a perfect stranger to that person. Or just even the presence. I love the questions of the 8-year-olds. I love the pushing of the boundaries of the teenagers. And I love the challenges that the older groups are running into. And I love all of your questions. I love your inquiry and your efforts into the practice, because you remind me of my own development, or you have a different angle on the Dhamma. So I don't sit here to teach all of you guys are teaching me. All of your questions are things that I consider quite carefully. I don't take any question as stupid. Sometimes I might come back and try to reframe the question for you and say, can you say this in terms of I felt this during today's meditation rather than Bhante, something, some really amorphous stuff. But I actually had Burmese meditation instructors doing the very same thing for me. If I showed up at an interview and I was just rambling on, they'd say boring. That was feedback to me. I had to be on the point. What was my experience? What happened for me? And sometimes it was terrible. Sometimes people think, oh, I had a really bad meditation, my mind was restless and all over the place. And then they would say to me, that's exactly it. That's exactly how your mind was. And I was really shocked that what I thought was bad practice was good practice. And what I sometimes thought was good practice was bad practice. And without that feedback from them, I wouldn't know what I know today. And it was across translators, and it was a big hassle, that they gave me their time. They gave me their time. That was extraordinary. They gave me their attention, they gave me their experience. And they were a guide. They were a real guide to me. So I did not just the 10 or 20 or maybe 30,000 hours of formal practice. But apart from that, I had people along the way who could give me a nudge or give me some direction, and that I could rely upon their advice. So I had a feedback mechanism going on that was very, very helpful to my practice and really helped get me out of a few holes along the way. And some of those holes were like hanging on to good practice. Some of those holes were not appreciating the difficult practice. And a lot of things were very, very paradoxical. A lot of things were the opposite to what I would have thought. And that was the problem. I was thinking, I just didn't know. I didn't have the experience. And they had the experience. Huge hours of experience to share with me. And it was a great gift. So we're super connected beings. We're not reptiles. We don't just crawl out of an egg and fend for ourselves for the rest of life in some sort of Darwinian. Darwin, if you ever read him, he was a very kind and generous man. He was a loving parent. Unfortunately, some philosophers after Darwin have sort of besmeared his name by talking about Darwinism as survival of the fittest and all sorts of other nasty ideas. We survive because we care. We survive because we're in relationship with the world. We survive because we have functional relationships with the world. We survive because of kindness. We survive because of generosity. We are not born able to self-defend ourselves. So when we're young, we're dependent. We're dependent as any tender child is. And as you see the teenagers going through, they're starting to learn independence. And you see the younger adults, and they're quite independent. But as we grow older and more mature in spiritual practice, we become interdependent. And where interdependency starts to work is that I can't achieve my goals without the help and cooperation of others. And to the degree that I can engage and have the help and cooperation of others is in fact how successful I am. I am not able to do things by myself. I'm not able to, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the skill, I don't have the means, I don't have the resources. You name it, I don't have it. But I can work with people who do. And together, we can do stuff. We can achieve what we need to achieve in life. And this interdependency is the highest level of spiritual practice. And in this sense, this is why Dana, for instance, is one of the bases of spiritual practice. And it is something that I work at every day. Every day a donor is coming for breakfast or for lunch or any of the other work going on around here. It's really an opportunity for me to cultivate and deepen my own practice in this spiritual life, and in turn share that practice with others. Most of you don't maybe have the same drive or ambition around these spiritual practices that I have, and I can share that knowledge and experience with you. Most of you, and I don't recommend it. I spend 5 years in Burma. I don't know. I still don't like the weather and the seasons and the food there. The diseases that I've had to suffer, the extreme discomfort that I've had there at times. I don't wish it on anybody else. You can tap into my experience. You don't have to go there and do that. I can speak in the same language as you guys. We can understand each other in a way. A lot of the time I had to learn up was down and back was front in Burma. So I appreciate what I can bring to the world, and I need to appreciate those teachings. It's not me, it's the teachings, the behaviors, the experience. I need to value what I bring into the world. I need to value myself as a human being. And I need to connect with that in everybody else as well, and value each and every other person for what they are, the gift that they are in this world. So this practice of Dana, and linked to that is like today's practice, which is Caga, reflection on the Dana. You can reflect on your generosity, you can reflect on the things that you have received, is a very important practice. And if you look very carefully at today's meditation, say compared to mudita, which we've done in other times, which is reflection on the skillfulness of others, you'll see it's a different practice. Today's practice is much quieter, much more still. And I reflected on this, like, why is this practice such a still practice? But I think it's really the practice of enough. The opposite of poverty is not abundance and flourishing. The opposite of poverty is enough. When we can really say to ourselves, this is enough, I am enough, then this is a very powerful experience. It is the opposite of shame. Shame is saying, I don't have enough, this isn't enough. People will think that I look wrong in some ways. This is shame speaking, and the opposite of that is, this is enough. I'm pretty enough, I'm knowledgeable enough, I like myself. This is enough. It's not that I'm loaded, I'm blinged out, and I have all the nice things that tick all of the status quo. It isn't that at all. That isn't the opposite of scarcity and poverty. That's just, in many ways, just more scarcity and more poverty. It is what we call being a hungry ghost. So you can meet people who are very wealthy financially, but very poor in their heart. They're very poor in time. They don't have time for their kids. They don't have time for emotional depth in their relationships. They don't have time for anything. They're chasing after one deal after another, or one power situation after another, or one promotion after another, in a meaningless way. I'm not suggesting that people who have wealth or power or privilege or position are empty. That's not the case either. It's just simply that some of those people may be empty because it's not actually achieving their goals in life. But when we have enough, when we can say we have enough, and one of the times that we can really say that we have enough is when we can actually give. Because we can only really genuinely give from wealth. If we don't have enough, that's toxic giving. That's giving with an expectation. But when we have a genuine level of wealth, we can actually give without expectation, because it's more than enough. I have more than enough. I'm just happy to share this with you. Why? Because I have a lot of this stuff. It's a lot of my knowledge, a lot of my time, a lot of my care, a lot of my whatever it is that I have a lot of. It's only when we have a lot of something that we can actually give, genuinely give wholeheartedly. And this is actually the time that we're saying to ourselves in another way, in another language, we're saying to ourselves, this is enough, I have enough, I am enough, I feel good about myself. And that's why I think one of the reasons that Dana is so important. So many of you want to be wealthy, but actually you're only wealthy in the act of giving. That's when we are giving, when we are wealthy. And it's very powerful. Because whenever there's a difficulty in life, we need to feel good about ourselves. And it's quite interesting where people will go to in those difficult times and places. And I noticed myself in my own times of difficulty that generosity is something that comes to my mind very quickly. What am I grateful for? You know, so am I looking at the glass half empty or half full? So my mind tends to see things as pretty, you know, okay, at least I have this. Or even when the glass is empty, it's full of potential. It's not empty, it's full of potential. And, you know, what we do here as monks is not for free, it's priceless. These teachings are priceless, and to the degree that you know and you practice these things, you will know that they are very valuable. And if you don't practice them, you'll never know. So there was a test being done in one of the institutions, I think it was in Harvard. And what they did was they set up an experiment where they asked people to memorize the Good Samaritan. To give a talk, they were asked to give a 5-minute talk on the Good Samaritan. Have you heard about the Good Samaritan? Have you heard the story? Just in brief, the Good Samaritan is it's about a situation that happened in the Bible, where there was a person was traveling along the road, and he was robbed by brigands and thrown into the drain on the side of the road and left to die. And many people passed by this Good Samaritan, or by this person who was on the side of the road. But eventually a Samaritan came along, a person of this tribe called the Samaritans, and he was a different tribe to the person who was in the gutter. And nevertheless, though this person wasn't of the same tribe or family or clan or association, it was this kind person who went into the gutter and pulled him out and took care of the person until he was back in health or able to look after himself again. So this became the story of the Good Samaritan. And so these people studying theology, or I think it was theology, like the religious department, they were asked to give a speech, a public speech on the Good Samaritan, 5 minutes, and they had to prepare something on the Good Samaritan. But they were in one building and they had to go to the lecture hall, and they would be called over to the lecture hall to give their speech. And so they did different things. So sometimes they rushed the person. They said you had 5 minutes to prepare, and then after about 3 minutes they came in and said, now you've got to go over immediately. Or they did other things like they would say, you've got plenty of time to walk over to the other building. And in other cases, they gave people very little time. They would rush them, like you've got to give this presentation in 1 minute's time, but it's in the other building. You better go over immediately. And on the way between the two buildings, there was a person lying down on the ground, looking pretty battered, looking like they needed some help. So here are all these people going over to the other lecture theatre to give a lecture on the Good Samaritan. Who helped? Do you think all of them helped? Who helped? They say if you want a job done, give it to a busy person, right? That's an expression I've heard. Huh? So was it the people who were in time scarcity or people who were in time abundance? Yeah, no, all you have to do is, like even with all of that what they call priming. Priming is where you condition somebody. You know, the people know the message. They have a message there that to give is good. And if they were rushed, that message went out the door. even if it was to give a lecture on doing good deeds is good. That's all you have to do, is just give people time scarcity, and a lot of the good stuff goes out the window in a rush. And this is our nature, quite frankly, it's our nature. And we may have time scarcity around this place. So I just have time to come here on a Sunday morning and you listen to this talk. But just remember that it's only in the doing of these teachings, it's only in the utility of these teachings that you really see their wealth. Otherwise it's just talk. It's just talk. And I know myself, maybe because I was dyslexic, that I put a lot of effort into doing rather than into talking about things. I put a lot of effort into that. So I in my career worked with people who were really autodidactic. They could just look at something and it was memorized. They could hear a phone number once and never forget it again. They were amazing, absolutely amazing people, and had done amazingly well in college. But I knew I had a different edge on them. I was very experiential. Something would go wrong, they would check the computer system and write a nice report. I'd go down and talk to the operator. And sometimes you found out the operators just put whatever they felt like into the report, especially if it was that they screwed up. And if you didn't have a good relationship with them and you weren't kind and friendly, like because I used to go down on all the other days and just say hi to them, or maybe buy them lunch, that they knew that I had promoted many of them. I put them up for awards when they had got things right, because I believed in generosity. I believed when people worked in the company were doing things well that they should be rewarded. I really believed in that, and I did it. And I paid for it out of my own pocket, because the company wouldn't pay for it at times. Once I took out 4 shifts of technicians because we had met goals and the company didn't want to reward them. They were rewarding the management. I was rewarded, but not them. And I didn't think it was right. And my other managers thought it was a great idea, but they didn't offer anything towards it. But I still feel happy about it. Not superior, just happy about it. I feel good about it because I felt it was the right thing to do. And in my life I've met a practice of generosity, and I find that it's very, very helpful in my practice as a monk. Without that generosity, without that history, without that, I would be in scarcity many times, because I don't have the resources that many of you rely on. I don't have that. But what I have is in here is a treasure trove in my heart. So I don't worry about certain things. I know that in the times of difficulty my mind is trained, and automatically it comes up, is what am I grateful for? And I mentioned it before and I'll mention it again. Is in my father's passing I felt intensely grateful to him, because he was taking away a great fear of death that I had. We all fear death, but we need to confront it someday. And my father was helping me to do that, and I was really grateful to that. I still feel very grateful to him. It's a great gift. And I never felt sad or a great sense of loss at that time, because I felt I was gaining something. Normally when people are dying we feel loss, but I didn't feel loss. I felt a great gain. It was a very, very spiritual experience for me, very strong. And what I'm talking about is not trivial. But that's because I had trained. This teaching that we did this morning of Caga and Dana, what am I thankful for? I had done this all over the world with groups like you. I've done this in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Ireland, in Perth. I forget, maybe there's a couple of other countries. Lots of groups, year after year after year after year, and it was there for me. That muscle was there in my need. So I'm telling you from experience, this works. What am I grateful for? And it has to just pop out, just like the airbag in that crash, in that difficulty. It deploys, because we've done the work. And we're not like those guys giving the talk on the Good Samaritans. We're not just people who know the jargon and we know the language and we know the theory, but we've done the practice. We've done the hard yard. So I have to say I'm really grateful to the regular donors, the people who rock up here. I always have a conversation with the Monday morning donor about, I was a Monday morning donor too. And I know what's involved in dhanas, because I've done it myself. And we can have a heart-to-heart conversation about it. And I know when I meet people who haven't done dana, they haven't done it. And I know people who pretend that they've done dana, and I know they're pretending that they've done dana, because they haven't done it. And as I often say here, only a snake sees the legs of another snake. Only somebody who has done something can sort of recognize it in another person. So this is very profound. If you want to do well in your practice of sila and of meditation, bhavana, growing your heart, do dana. There is something very profound in it. It's fundamental. So if you have any questions, I'd be very grateful